Now, before we dive too deep into today's video, let's first acknowledge the fact that all throughout 2019 and 2020, the black grassroots were demanding reparations for the descendants of American slavery, not police reform. Police reform was offered up to you by the Democratic Party as they sought to exploit the death of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor for political gain. As Rahm Emanuel said in his 2008 interview with the Wall Street Journal,
"You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before."
And with the death of George Floyd and many others, Joe Biden and company wasted no time sidestepping reparations to sell black Americans on a general police reform bill that was named after George Floyd to make black people feel like, I repeat, to make black people feel like they were actually getting transformative concrete legislation for their vote. Now, since getting into office, despite the Democrats controlling the House and the Senate, Biden has yet to sign into law the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Yet he has managed to sign into law an anti-Asian hate crime bill, secured $31 billion for the Native American community, then secured another $50 billion on top of that for the Native American community, as well as signed into law a host of other bills for the LGBTQ community, as well as for immigrants, leaving the black community wondering, well, what about us?
I want to ask you about your domestic agenda. You've gotten a lot of questions about voting rights, Mr. President, but I want to ask you about black voters, one of your most loyal constituencies.
Yep.
I was in Congressman Clyburn's district yesterday in South Carolina. You opened this news conference talking about him. I spoke to a number of black voters who fought to get you elected, and now they feel as though you are not fighting hard enough for them and their priorities. And they told me they see this push on voting rights more as a last-minute PR push than it is a legitimate effort to get legislation passed. So what do you say to these black voters who say that you do not have their backs as you promised on the campaign trail?
Because of this, black voter turnout in the midterm election is projected to be relatively low. So in order to circumvent this, the Democratic Party has thrown a slew of nonsensical symbolic legislation to black America. Everything from making Lift Every Voice and Sing the country's national hymn to passing a hair discrimination bill. And despite all of this, black Americans appear to not be falling for the banana in the tailpipe. So in a desperate attempt to get black Americans to show up to the polls and vote blue no matter who, Joe Biden completely insults the intelligence of black America by signing into law a cheap knockoff version of the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act via executive order. And he did this on the second anniversary of George Floyd's death to make it even more insulting. Now, I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, why is this a knockoff police reform bill? Well, here's why. If you let the Biden administration tell it, this is a measure of what we can do together to heal the very soul of this nation, to address profound fear and trauma, exhaustion that particularly black Americans have experienced for generations.
That's why the executive order I'll be signing today is so important in my view. It's a measure of what we can do together to heal the very soul of this nation, to address profound fear and trauma, exhaustion, that particularly black Americans have experienced for generations, and to channel that private pain and public outrage into a rare mark of progress for years to come.
Now that sounds good, but if you actually take a moment to look into it, this executive order holds no bearings on the NYPD, the LAPD, the Chicago PD, or any other city police department that black Americans actually interact with on a daily basis, because this executive order only applies to federal law enforcement. Wednesday's actions, which apply to more than 100,000 federal law enforcers, reflects the delicate balance Biden has sought to strike on policing after promising to do everything in my power to address racism and excessive use of force. The resulting order is far narrower in scope than was initially sought, but civil rights leaders and some major police groups welcomed the policies. Of course they did. We know full well that an executive order cannot address America's policing crisis the same way Congress has the ability to, but we have got to do everything we can. Derrick Johnson, the president of the NAACP, who attended Wednesday's signing ceremony, said in a statement. So Derrick Johnson is fully aware that this is a do-nothing knockoff executive order, yet he's in full support of it. Shout out to Black leadership. The order applies only to federal agencies. Biden does not have direct authority over state and local agencies. But the White House official said the order incentivizes law enforcement agencies at every level to participate in the National Policy Registry and to adopt the new accountability standards and de-escalation policies established by the order. Sure. Now, in closing, I just want to take a moment to go over who federal law enforcers actually are. On your screen right now is a complete list of federal law enforcers in the state of California. But by and large, this list should be more or less the same across every state in America. Now, to make things simple, I'm not going to list off all of the federal law enforcers. I'm just going to go over the ones that everybody knows already. Now, you tell me, how often do you hear about highly questionable shootings occurring to Black men by the hands of the Central Intelligence Agency, Federal Bureau of Investigations, Homeland Security, U.S. Marshal Service, U.S. Park Police, or the U.S. Secret Service? The average Black man almost literally never interacts with these federal law enforcers ever. But because Joe Biden and the Democrats think so lowly of us, this is the nonsensical executive order that he gave you to get you to vote blue no matter who come election time. This is how dumb the Democratic Party thinks Black voters are. And I'm hoping come this midterm election, we can prove them wrong. And with all that being said, that does it for today's video. So please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. All social media links will be pinned in the comment section below. Please make sure you text tdhiphop to number 33222. That's tdhiphop to number 33222. That way you'll get a direct text notification whenever I release a new video, but it also serves as a protection plan for myself in case YouTube ever gives this channel the axe. I'll be able to send you a direct link to where you can find me next. And last but not least, for those of you who have a love and appreciation for the work that I put in on this channel, the number one way you can show your support is through Patreon. For only $3 a month, that will help put me in position to take TD Hip Hop Media off of YouTube. Remember, the goal is not to grow big on YouTube, but to grow independent of YouTube. And for those who have issues with joining Patreon, you could also hit the join button that's next to the subscribe button, and that way you can become an official channel member for as little as $3 a month as well. And lastly, if you have not already, please make sure you join the emailing list. There is no way that I can go independent of YouTube if I cannot take the audience with me. And the link to that will be pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you for your time, and until the next video, peace.